Mama Donna Day 8. Welcome, alternates, to the Alternate Podcast. Are you guys excited? We are almost done with Donna Adelson. We are wrapping it right up. And I think today, well, actually, tomorrow I'm going to tell you, is going to be closing arguments. And they are giving 2 hours to each, the defense and the prosecution. So let's hear what happened on the last day of defense on the case of the state of Florida versus Donna Adelson on the murder of her son-in-law, Dan Markel. Well, we continued with defense, like I just said. And behind the jury's presence, I do want to just tell you a little bit of this. So the defense came up and said they potentially have a witness, a jailhouse witness, actually somebody that works in the jail, that could potentially be somebody that could help Donna's defense. Well, she doesn't want to talk. So they bring in the sheriff to say, hey, can this person talk? He says yes, but she has not been subpoenaed. The judge says, do you want to subpoena her? We can go ahead and do that. But the defense ultimately says, well, no, because they don't know what she actually has to say. So we are not going to hear from her at all. But it was kind of a weird, I've never seen something like that, so it was interesting. But I do want to hear what this woman has to say. And we will never know. Okay, so then they moved on to the first witness, who was Wendy Adelson's attorney during her divorce. Her name is Kristen Addison. Now, Adelson, it was so confusing. I kept thinking that the attorney was wrong when he kept saying Mrs. Addison. And I'm like, Adelson? What is she saying? But it's Kristen. And from what I can see, it's Addison or Adenson. Talk about name confusion. Okay, so she was Wendy's attorney for the divorce, the custody, and the relocation. Defense brought her on to talk about how she thought Dan and Wendy's divorce was not contentious, and everything seemed pretty normal in her opinion. She even said that when the judge ultimately ruled that Wendy could not move to South Beach or South Florida, wherever she was going to move, Miami, and not leave Tallahassee, that everything seemed fine. She even said Donna and Harvey were waiting in the hallway because ultimately they could have been called as witnesses, but they weren't. So they were in the hallway the whole hearing. And when Wendy came out to tell them that she was not going to be able to relocate to live by them, that there were no arm failings or yelling or misbehaving by anybody in any way. She ultimately had to step away actually from Wendy's trial because Dan Markel was suing her for fraud, and it got a little bit messy during the end or right before Dan was murdered. And when I say that she was being sued for fraud or something about how Dan owed her $10,000. So at the end of the day, when their case was finalized with their divorce, Dan said that she was told that he needed to pay Wendy's attorney fees of $10,000 and I think $70,000 to Wendy herself. Well, he did not like the fact that he had to pay the $10,000, and when Mrs. Addison kept giving him, ultimatums like, hey, you better pay me my $10,000 or I'm going to, put you in contempt of court. That kind of put her in a interesting situation where she needed to now step down from being Wendy's attorney. She also did say that Dan Markel started filing a lot of emotions. He probably did have a lot of emotions also, but he started filing a lot of motions that called different assets of Wendy's fraud, that he didn't know about it during the divorce. And in her opinion, he was aware of all of this. He just kind of was, and she didn't say this, but I could definitely see it. He was just trying to poke the bear. And since he's an attorney, he can file all these motions and not actually have to pay attorney's fees for it, which is real nice in any case where you're dealing with attorneys and having to pay for attorney fees. That is not nice. So from my observation from this testimony, Dan was mad, did not want to pay the $80,000 or so that he was ordered to pay. And so he just filed a bunch of things that probably ultimately would have been thrown out of court, but they were a big headache for Wendy and her attorney. And this is also what I got out of this testimony, which made me kind of think, why would the defense put this woman on the stand? I get it. She was there to say, this is just a standard divorce. Everything was hunky-dory. It ended in 10 months. It was fine. Everything was settled. The only thing that wasn't settled was the fact that Wendy wanted to move. But a lot of people want to move. That's something that is not out of the ordinary. And a lot of people don't get to actually move. Actually, in all the cases that she's had, I think she said only one case got to actually move out of the area, and that was due to some, I think what she said was child molestation. So obviously that is something that you're like, okay, yes, please move away from that person. But other than that, she really hasn't had any cases that have been able to relocate. Also, they did ask her about money and if money can be involved to, persuade somebody to move. And that she did say yes. But as an outsider looking in with this amicable divorce, I don't think it really was. I see this divorce as maybe at first amicable, but then once she started to try to move her kids away, Dan was like, I don't think so, lady. I'm going to make your life hell if you are going to even bring that up. But that's my opinion watching this case every single day. And from what I see, that is what I know. Also, which makes me think that Donna, being a mama bear that she is, wants to protect her little Wendy even more. So I don't know if she actually helped or hindered the defense in that case. And then we had the second witness, which is, I think there's one other than her, and this one was a long witness. Her name is Linda Bailey. Okay, Linda was hired by the defense to be an expert witness and examine the divorce case between Dan and Wendy. Basically to say exactly what Mrs. Adelson said is that everything was hunky-dory between these two. Their divorce was kumbaya, Bailey had also just sat through the previous testimony with Kristen Addison, and prosecution was not happy. So you may or may not know that most witnesses are sequestered, meaning that they are not allowed to watch the trial before they get on the witness stand. Every once in a while, the judge will allow it, and they have to get previous approval for it. Well, there was no previous approval for this witness to watch Kristen Addison's testimony. And so prosecution was PO'd. I mean, they were beyond themselves. And I think the judge was pretty mad also at the defense for their mistake, because this is not the first time. This is actually the second time that they have made this mistake, or I don't know, maybe they're doing it on purpose. I don't know. But whatever their purpose of having this woman watch the testimony, there must have been a purpose to it. And the prosecution did not want her to take the stand. But you got to think, as the judge, if he says no, then I think that is a right to appeal right away for Donna. So, of course, he kind of, slaps their hand a little bit, the defense, and says, this is a problem, but we are going to let her testify after we ask her if the previous testimony, hindered what she was going to say at all. And of course, she's going to say no. She testified under direct that this divorce was amicable, both parties were moving on with their lives, but we actually know that's not the case because when Dan was killed, there was still court proceedings and motions filed, and that relocation was, just denied. I mean, we just heard 20 minutes prior or even 5 minutes prior with Kristen that this was the case. She also speaks to the fact that Donna and Wendy emailed back and forth and how involved Donna was. She says, that happens all the time. She testified that that happens all the time, that moms get involved with their kids on a divorce or parents, that people reach out to their family when they're going through something like this, and then the family gets involved and helps them. I don't think that, I think that's true. Like, I don't have any dispute with that. I think if I was going through a divorce, I would reach out to the people that were closest to me to help in that, and that would be your parents, right? And in that situation, also, you don't want to maybe talk to a friend because, people are judgmental and your parents aren't going to judge you as much as a friend. So I would agree. She also just really did piggyback on the previous attorney. So I do think that she was listening in for insight. She also got into 10 points that Dan put together in his motion and said each of those points was lengthy, a page long or so, and most of them were just going to be thrown out. One was the first right of refusal with a grandparent, which she tried to say, is Dan wanted the first right to say, hey, if Donna's in town, I want to watch the kids if Wendy's going on a date or has a work event or is out of town for any reason. And what, Miss Bailey said is the judge would not have granted Dan that. Also, we don't know because Dan was murdered before that judgment. She also stated that the judge wouldn't agree with the child making damaging comments because that child was 4. I found this part of her testimony also made me think like, this is a motive for Donna. If I was Donna, I would be pissed. Dan wants Donna out of there. If it wasn't enough not to move by Donna, well, now when Donna's visiting, he doesn't want his kids around her at all. Prosecution actually, I think, did a really good job here. They came in swinging. I'm telling you, she was so mad. She was not happy that this lady was on the stand, and she went in really hard. So I'm going to play you a bunch of the cross here because I think this made some really good points. She asked Miss Bailey if she thought this case was not contentious. Of course, that's what she was saying the whole time. And so here is some clips for you.
You were asked to do in this case?
I was asked to review the documents I was given and to opine about whether this was truly a highly contentious custody case, essentially.
And why would your opinion about whether it was a highly contentious custody case matter?
Well, that's for somebody else to decide. I mean, I've done 2,000 cases, or give or take 100 on each side, and I think I have a pretty good judge of where this falls as far as contentiousness.
Sure, but you're somebody that has vast experience with a ton of divorces, right?
Sure.
The parties only have experience with one divorce, right?
I don't know how many they have experience with,
so
but
isn't
sure.
the contentiousness in the eye of the beholder, in the sense that to you it might not seem like a big deal, but to the parties it might be the most important thing in the whole wide world. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that?
Ms. Kappelman, Ms. Bailey, wait for the question, wait for the answer. Do not speak over each other.
Do you agree that a case, as a lawyer, might be routine, whereas to the parties it's the most important thing in the world? Do they ever get upset about the gibberish in the pleadings, the offensive materials in the pleadings, regardless of whether or not it's going to impact their chance of success in court, it can be emotionally charged, can it?
I would say annoying more than emotionally charged.
You would not say that divorce and child custody issues are emotionally charged?
They can be, but in this case, they weren't.
They weren't? How do you know?
From the pleadings, because I don't have 10,000 pages in front of me.
You're not in the mind of the people whose lives are impacted by these pleadings. It's not just about pieces of paper and a binder, is it?
I don't think that's what I said.
People's lives are impacted by the decisions that go on in court, which for you are routine. Would you agree?
In this instance, they reached agreement on all issues, so they had complete control of what was coming out of the court.
Ma'am, could you please answer my question? Are people's lives impacted in drastic ways by routine matters that we see in court as lawyers?
People's lives change after divorce, certainly.
So, like, I may think I've got a bag of stinky garbage, but the garbage man might not think it's stinky at all. Do you get the reference?
I don't.
What is no big deal to us is a big deal to these litigants, right? You can't agree with that.
Perhaps.
You can't agree with it. Strike the question.
So you can see how heightened she is. Clearly, she knows this is crazy. What she's saying is crazy. And then she goes on to say,
aren't these issues raised in these pleadings potential fuel to make people upset?
Potential fuel to possibly make people upset?
Yes, ma'am. For example, you were asked about what we've called the grandma motion. You say, oh, it's no big deal. It wouldn't be granted. It was buried in there. But the allegation is grandma is disparaging me to these kids, and I won't tolerate it, right? Couldn't that be upsetting to grandma?
You'd have to ask grandma. I don't
Exactly.
It shouldn't have been. There was no proof,
It shouldn't have been, in your opinion.
in my opinion.
But in your opinion, divorce is no reason to commit suicide, right?
True.
and then you guys, she ends with this.
No, because the divorce was over in July.
Divorce was over in July, but they kept filing papers, didn't they?
Well, and the case was set for hearing May 15th, 2014. So the motion that Ms. Adelson filed in October, and the motion that Mr. Markel filed in February, and then the motion he filed in March, were all set for hearing May 15th. And then Mr. Markel amped it up again, and on May 5th he filed the motion that accused Kristen of fraud, so she had to withdraw, so they had to move that motion. So had that not been filed, they would have had a resolution on May 15th.
We don't know that. How do you know it was going to go on May 15th? Could have gotten continued for any zillion different reasons, couldn't it?
It was set for May 15th, and it was noticed for May 15th.
Set for May 15th, but at the time of Dan Markel's murder, litigation was still ongoing in this case.
It
Yes?
was.
Yes. And even after that was resolved, there would be nothing stopping them from having a bunch of other time-sharing issues or whatever come up, and they might have ended up with reams of paper, right?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Overruled. The witness has provided an opinion. The state will cross-examine.
I guess my response to that would be, I think it would have been to Wendy's benefit to proceed with those hearings, because nothing makes someone stop filing nonsense pleadings and motions better than having them ordered to pay the other side's attorney's fees. So had they gone to the hearing on May 15th, and had Wendy have been successful, he would have very likely had to pay Wendy's attorney's fees. And I really encourage my clients in these situations to take it to hearing, so once the other side gets kind of slapped down, if you will, by the court and made to pay your fees, then they tend to back off.
But that hadn't happened yet.
It had not happened yet.
And we'll never know when that was going to happen, because we never got to that point, right?
Clearly.
Because he was murdered.
Clearly.
Okay, so that witness goes off the stand, and the judge then asks Donna Adelson herself if she is going to be a witness in her own defense. Well, this throws the whole defense team off. They said that they thought they would have more time to discuss. Donna says she doesn't know. The judge is like, you guys, this is what happens in every court case. We get to this point where you have got to decide if you are going to testify. And they are just kind of scrambling. He says, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Well, ultimately, Donna says that she's not ready to testify at this time. I don't know what we will see tomorrow. From what happened from here on out, I think that Donna is not testifying. It might be in her best interest not to testify. I kind of feel like it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I mean, maybe I would try to get myself up there and just say something, because I don't think her defense did anything for her. I think that we have got a guilty verdict, at least on conspiracy, if not more. So we did have one more witness come to the stand for a very brief moment. It was a victim advocate named Sarah Newhouse. She was there when Wendy called Donna to tell her about Dan's murder. She said that she could hear that Donna was shocked, and appeared like it was the first time that Donna did ever hear that Dan had been killed. From her opinion, she seemed shocked, and that's really all she was there to say, is that Donna seemed shocked when she found out that Dan was murdered. Now, on cross-examination, she was asked one question, and that was if she remembered Wendy saying that her mom took that news really well. Well, that question was struck. Defense object and said it was hearsay, and the judge told the jury to strike that question. However, of course, we all did hear it. So that was it. Then they spent a lot of time outside the jury's presence going over every single charge against Donna. And that was long and tedious and nothing like that we really need to hear about, because tomorrow is really what, the meat and potatoes here. We are going to wrap this case right up, hear the closing arguments, which I think could be strong on either side. The defense better get themselves together to do a strong close, because I think that if I would have to say, prosecution is up here, defense is down here, and unless they can flip the script real quick and make us think that Donna actually didn't have any involvement, then Donna is probably going to spend some years, if not all of them, in the clink. But we shall know soon. And so listen tomorrow, day 9, closing arguments. And until then, think like a juror and decide like one too. And if you are in Denver area and you want to come to CrimeCon, come and see Margot and I. All right, clink, clink.